From the bridge table where she watched Dexter grow up, to the hospital bed where she asked him to kill her, Camilla Fig was Dexter's first accomplice. This is how she figured it out, how long she kept the secret, and how far she went to protect a serial killer she considered family. Camilla Fig was practically family to the Morgans, with decades of intimate access to Harry's parenting decisions and Dexter's increasingly unusual development. Jean and Camilla Fig were Harry and Doris Morgan's closest companions for over 2 decades, spending countless evenings playing bridge at the kitchen table, sharing holiday dinners, and navigating the complexities of raising children in law enforcement families. These were people who knew each other's deepest secrets, financial struggles, and family dramas. When Harry first brought home the traumatized 3-year-old who would become Dexter, Camilla was there. She witnessed the sleepless nights, the specialized therapy sessions, and Harry's growing concern about his adopted son's complete lack of emotional response to normal childhood experiences. While other adults might have attributed Dexter's behavior to his horrific early trauma, Camilla observed something more troubling. As Dexter grew older, Camilla had a front row seat to witness his disturbing development under Harry's increasingly secretive guidance. She watched as normal childhood milestones passed without the expected emotional growth. Birthday parties where Dexter mimicked happiness rather than feeling it. Christmas mornings where he perfectly performed gratitude while remaining completely detached. She noticed the intense, whispered conversations between Harry and Dexter that stopped abruptly when adults entered the room. Most telling were Harry's reactions to his son's behavior. Instead of seeking professional help for what appeared to be severe emotional dysfunction, Harry began implementing what he called structure and discipline. Camilla witnessed late-night phone calls where Harry sounded more like he was managing a crisis than raising a child. The bridge games became tense affairs where Harry and Doris would exchange worried glances whenever Dexter's name came up in conversation. Camilla began to understand that Harry was actively managing something dangerous in his son, something he couldn't discuss even with his closest friends. Unlike other family friends who dismissed Dexter's oddities as the lingering effects of childhood trauma, Camilla's intimate knowledge of family dynamics allowed her to recognize the truth. Harry was carefully shaping and controlling something potentially lethal. This early recognition created an unspoken understanding between Camilla and Harry. She became complicit in maintaining the family's carefully constructed facade, never questioning Harry's unconventional methods or expressing concern about Dexter's development to outside parties. When other friends asked about the boy's progress, Camilla deflected with vague reassurances. But knowing who he was as a boy wasn't the only reason she stayed quiet. Her position at Miami Metro gave her full visibility into what he became. As Miami Metro's records supervisor, Camilla Fig held one of the most quietly powerful positions in the entire police department. She had unrestricted access to every criminal record, suspect file, sealed case note, and piece of evidence that passed through the system, including information that could expose patterns most detectives never noticed. When Dexter began working as a blood spatter analyst, his professional curiosity about certain cases seemed perfectly normal at first. Forensic specialists often research past cases for patterns, methodology, and comparative analysis. But Camilla began noticing something troubling about Dexter's specific request. He was systematically researching criminals who had escaped justice. The request started innocuously enough. Dexter would ask for files on suspects who had been released on technicalities, cases where evidence had been compromised, or situations where guilty men walked free due to procedural errors. Initially, Camilla assumed this was professional thoroughness or academic interest. After all, studying failed prosecutions could help improve future investigations. But the pattern became impossible to ignore when she realized Dexter's research focused exclusively on the most heinous offenders, child killers, serial rapists, and brutal murderers who had slipped through the legal cracks. He never requested files on white-collar criminals, drug dealers, or even armed robbers. His interest was laser-focused on the worst humanity had to offer, specifically those who continued walking free. Camilla's position gave her access to information that even detectives didn't always see. She could track which files were accessed, when, and by whom. She began noticing a disturbing timeline. Dexter would request a file, study it thoroughly, and then weeks or months later, that same criminal would mysteriously disappear or turn up dead under suspicious circumstances. The connection became undeniable when she cross-referenced Dexter's files requests with Miami's missing persons reports and unsolved murders. The correlation was too precise to be coincidental. Men like Jamie Jaworski, whose case file Dexter had studied extensively, simply vanished without explanation shortly after those requests. What made Camilla's situation particularly chilling was her willingness to continue providing these files despite recognizing the pattern. She had enough administrative authority to deny requests or flag suspicious research pattern to internal affairs. Instead, she became an active enabler, ensuring that Dexter had everything he needed to continue his work. Her complicity was deliberate assistance. When Dexter needed background information on potential targets, Camilla provided comprehensive files. When he required access to sealed records that technically required higher authorization, she found ways to bend the rules. She became his unofficial research assistant in activities she knew were leading to deaths. The most damning evidence of her awareness came during her conversations with other staff members, when colleagues occasionally commented on Dexter's unusual research interests. Camilla would deflect it with humor, calling it his morbid sense of fun. It was active misdirection designed to protect him from scrutiny. Years of providing files that led directly to disappearances should have triggered some kind of internal investigation or a personal crisis of conscience. Instead, Camilla continued her assistance, proving that her loyalty to the Morgan family suspended her professional obligations and moral boundaries. If you're already connecting the dots here, hit that like button. Camilla didn't just suspect Dexter, she helped him build the kill list. When she realized the full truth, she didn't alert anyone. Instead, she erased the one file that could have exposed everything. The moment Camilla Fig crossed the line from passive enabler to active conspirator came when she made the deliberate decision to destroy the most crucial piece of evidence that could have exposed Dexter's true nature: the 1973 Shipyard Massacre file that contained the horrific details of his mother's murder and his traumatic origins. In Season 1, when Dexter approached Camilla requesting the file on the Shipyard Massacre, her immediate and absolute refusal should have been the end of the conversation. Record supervisors routinely denied access to sensitive files, especially those involving ongoing investigations or sealed cases. But Camilla's reaction went far beyond standard bureaucratic procedure. She became visibly agitated and defensive, clearly hiding something significant. The 1973 Shipyard Massacre file contained crime scene photos of unprecedented brutality, witness statements describing the chainsaw dismemberment of multiple victims, and more importantly, documentation of a traumatized 3-year-old boy found sitting in a pool of his mother's blood. Any investigator studying this case would immediately recognize the psychological implications of such severe childhood trauma. What made Camilla's actions truly damning was her later confession to Dexter about what she'd done with the file. She had systematically destroyed every piece of evidence the day Harry officially adopted him. The timing of the destruction was crucial. Camilla waited until the adoption was finalized, ensuring that Dexter's legal connection to the Morgan family was secure before eliminating any trace of his biological origins. This level of premeditation proved that she understood exactly what she was protecting him from and why that protection was necessary. Her justification that Harry wanted to keep you safe revealed the conspiracy between them. She was following Harry's explicit instructions to eliminate evidence that could potentially expose the psychological damage that shaped Dexter's homicidal nature. Both of them understood that anyone investigating the Shipyard Massacre would immediately connect Dexter's trauma to his current behavioral patterns. The destruction of this file represented a point of no return for Camilla. She had moved from simply providing information to actively destroying evidence that could incriminate someone she knew was dangerous. She knowingly covered up evidence that could have explained a killer's origins. Most importantly, Camilla's willingness to destroy official police records demonstrated that she valued her loyalty to the Morgan family above her professional integrity and legal obligations. She understood that preserving this evidence could eventually lead to uncomfortable questions about Dexter's psychological development and Harry's unconventional parenting methods. The file destruction also revealed how long Camilla had been planning to protect Dexter. She didn't make this decision impulsively when he requested the file. She had it destroyed years earlier, proving that she anticipated this moment and taken preemptive action. This level of foresight suggested that she always known that Dexter would eventually want to understand his origins, and had deliberately eliminated that possibility. Her actions made sure that anyone investigating his background would hit a dead end, unable to trace the psychological roots of his behavior back to the traumatic event that shaped his entire identity. Even when a decorated cop like Doak started digging, Camilla protected Dexter at the cost of her integrity. The true test of Camilla's loyalty came when Sergeant James Dokes began his relentless investigation in the Dexter's background, and her response revealed just how far she was willing to go to protect a man she knew was dangerous. When Dokes came looking for that same Shipyard Massacre file, Camilla's reaction proved that she would choose Dexter's safety over the truth. even when confronted by a decorated police sergeant. Dokes was conducting a serious investigation based on legitimate suspicions about his colleagues' behavior. As someone with military combat experience and finely tuned instincts for detecting threats, Dokes had recognized something fundamentally wrong about Dexter that others missed. His request for the Shipyard Massacre file represented a genuine attempt to understand the psychological roots of what he perceived as dangerous behavior. When Camilla told Dokes that the file didn't exist, she was lying directly to a police officer conducting an official investigation. This was a deliberate obstruction of justice. She knew exactly why Dokes wanted that information and chose to deny him access to evidence that could have validated his suspicions about Dexter. Dokes' frustration at hitting this dead end was completely justified, and his anger towards Camilla reflected his understanding that she was deliberately impeding his investigation. When he snapped at her for claiming the file was missing, he was reacting to obvious deception from someone who should have been cooperating with law enforcement. The most damning aspect of Camilla's response was her immediate decision to warn Dexter about Dokes' investigation. Instead of maintaining professional neutrality or reporting Dokes' suspicious behavior to superiors, she ran directly to Dexter with concerns about losing her job. Her claim was that she was worried about her employment was a transparent excuse for warning Dexter that someone was investigating his background. Camilla understood that Dokes represented the greatest threat Dexter had faced to that point, and her loyalty lay entirely with protecting the killer rather than helping the detective. This warning gave Dexter crucial time to prepare for Dokes' continued investigation and potentially eliminate the threat entirely. By alerting him to danger, Camilla became an active participant in whatever measures Dexter might take to protect himself. She understood that her information could lead to Dokes' death, and she provided it anyway. The incident also revealed how completely Camilla had chosen sides in this conflict. When faced with a choice between supporting a legitimate police investigation and protecting someone she knew was killing people, she chose protection without hesitation. Most tellingly, Camilla never expressed any guilt or second thoughts about obstructing Dokes' investigation. She never questioned whether she was doing the right thing or considered the possibility that Dokes might be trying to stop something terrible. Her loyalty to Dexter was absolute and unwavering, regardless of the consequences for others. Her actions during the Dokes investigation proved that she had moved far beyond passive complicity. She was now actively working to protect Dexter's ability to continue killing, even when it meant lying to police officers and obstructing legitimate investigations. This level of commitment to protecting a serial killer demonstrated just how completely she understood and accepted what he was. At that point, she was actively involved. By this point in their relationship, Camilla had moved beyond protecting Dexter from investigation to actively supporting him with the tools he needed to select and hunt his victims. Her provision of case files was direct participation in murder, and she knew it. The most obvious example was her handling of the James Jaworski file, a case that perfectly illustrated how Camilla's assistance translated directly into death. Jaworski was exactly the type of criminal who slipped through legal cracks, a suspected child killer who had escaped conviction due to insufficient evidence and prosecutorial incompetence. His case represented everything wrong with the justice system that Harry had taught Dexter to correct. When Dexter requested Jaworski's file, Camilla gave him comprehensive background data, personal details, current address information, and behavioral patterns that would be essential for someone planning to track and kill him. The timing between Dexter's file requests and subsequent disappearances had become impossible to ignore. Camilla would provide detailed information about a suspect's background, habits, and location within weeks or months, and that same person would vanish without explanation. The correlation was too precise to be coincidental, yet she continued providing files with full knowledge of their ultimate purpose. What made her actions particularly damning in this case was the specificity of the information she provided. Standard case files contain basic facts about crimes and investigations, but Camilla consistently went beyond official records to include personal details that would only be useful for someone planning direct contact with the subjects. Current addresses, employee information, family connections, and daily routines, all information that a killer would need but a legitimate researcher wouldn't. Her casual demeanor when discussing these files with Dexter revealed how completely she had normalized their arrangement. There was no tension, no moral conflict, no indication that she understood she was participating in murder. She treated these deadly transactions like routine administrative tasks, further proving her complete acceptance of Dexter's true nature. The craziest aspect of this pattern was Camilla's ability to look at case files and essentially select victims for Dexter. When she came across cases involving escaped killers, failed prosecutions, or obvious miscarriages of justice, she would bring them to his attention, knowing exactly what would happen next. She had not just become an enabler, but an active participant in the victim selection process. Her willingness to continue this pattern for years demonstrated that she felt no guilt or remorse about the deaths that resulted from her assistance. Each missing person, each unsolved disappearance, each case that went cold after Dexter's research, none of it troubled her conscience enough to stop providing information. This level of direct participation required Camilla to completely dehumanize Dexter's victims. She had to view these men as not human beings with rights and families, but as problems that needed to be solved through extrajudicial execution. Her moral framework had shifted so completely that she saw murder as justice and Dexter as his righteous agent. The systematic nature of her assistance proved that this was calculated. Ongoing participation in serial murder, with Camilla serving as Dexter's research department and target acquisition specialist. But even more damning evidence of her complete knowledge was yet to come, because she would soon reveal that she had always known the full truth about Dexter's origins and his brother's identity. I think by this point, Camilla had become so invested in Dexter's mission that she genuinely believed that she was helping serve justice, even though she was actually enabling a murderer. And when retirement came calling, she didn't worry about her pension. She worried about leaving Dexter unprotected. If you think this makes her an accessory, you're not wrong. Subscribe now because we're not even at the worst part yet. The depth of Camilla's commitment to protecting Dexter became most apparent when she began approaching retirement age and faced the terrifying prospect of leaving him vulnerable within the Miami metro system. Her strategic planning around her departure revealed that she viewed protecting him as her primary professional responsibility, more important than any official duties. By the time Camilla reached her 60s, she had already served Miami Metro for over 3 decades and was eligible for full retirement benefits. For most career employees, retirement planning involved financial considerations, pension calculations, and dreams of leisure time. But Camilla's retirement planning centered around a single overwhelming concern. How could she leave Dexter exposed to potential discovery by a replacement who might notice the pattern she had spent years concealing? The normal timeline for her retirement should have been straightforward. She had accumulated enough service years, her pension was secure, and her age made continued work optional rather than necessary. Yet Camilla delayed her departure year after year, citing various excuses about training replacements, completing ongoing projects, and ensuring smooth transitions. The real reason was her fear of abandoning the person who had become her primary concern. Her decision to postpone retirement was strategic protection of a serial killer who depended on her institutional knowledge and administrative access to continue operating safely. She understood that a new records supervisor might notice things that she had spent decades carefully managing and concealing. The challenge of training a replacement without exposing Dexter's activities required incredible delicacy. Camilla needed to teach someone the technical aspects of record management while ensuring they never developed the analytical skills or institutional memory that might reveal dangerous patterns. She had to share operational knowledge while withholding the intuitive understanding that came from decades of protecting someone specific. Her comments about having so much work to do were about the ongoing project of maintaining Dexter's cover, ensuring his continued access to information and protecting him from the kind of scrutiny that a fresh perspective might bring to the records department. Most telling was her resistance to training anyone too thoroughly in the deeper aspects of file management and historical case access. She deliberately kept certain knowledge to herself, understanding that comprehensive training might create someone capable of recognizing the patterns that she had worked so hard to obscure. Her replacement would inherit the job, but not the full understanding necessary to continue her protective work. The retirement planning also revealed how completely her professional identity had merged with her role as Dexter's protector. She couldn't separate her legitimate job responsibilities from her unofficial duties as his enabler and guardian. Leaving work meant abandoning him, and that was a betrayal that she couldn't contemplate. Her eventual decision to finally retire came only when her cancer diagnosis made continued work impossible. And even then, she spent her final working days ensuring that any potential problematic files were properly archived and that access protocols were simplified in ways that would benefit Dexter while confusing potential investigators. The timing of her retirement and subsequent death ensured that she would never have to face the consequences of leaving Dexter unprotected. She managed to maintain her guardianship role right up until her death, never experiencing the anxiety of wondering whether her replacement might discover what she had spent decades concealing. The most shocking revelation about Camilla's knowledge came when she confessed that she had read Dexter's entire adoption file before destroying it, meaning she knew everything about his traumatic past, his connection to Brian Moser, and the psychological damage that shaped him into a killer. This was informed complicitly with full understanding of the consequences. When Camilla admitted to reading the file, she revealed the true scope of what she had known for decades. The adoption records contained detailed psychological evaluations, witness statements, medical reports documenting his catatonic state after the trauma, and, most importantly, information about his older brother who had survived the chainsaw attack but disappeared into the foster system. The file would have painted a clear picture of two severely traumatized children who had witnessed their mother's brutal dismemberment and sat in her blood for days. Any reasonable person reading those psychological assessments would understand that such extreme childhood trauma would create lasting psychological damage, potentially manifesting in violent behavior or a complete emotional detachment. Most significantly, the file contained Brian's real name and background information that would allow anyone to track his development through the foster care system. When the ice truck killer case dominated Miami headlines, Camilla would have immediately recognized Brian Moser as Dexter's missing brother. The connection between the two serial killers would have been impossible for her to miss. This revelation meant that Camilla had watched the entire ice truck killer investigation unfold while knowing that Dexter was hunting his own brother. She saw him working the crime scenes, analyzing evidence, and getting emotionally involved in the case, all while understanding the personal connection that no one else suspected. Her silence during this period proved her commitment to protecting Dexter regardless of circumstances. Her decision to read the file before destroying it demonstrated calculated curiosity about exactly what she was covering up. She wanted to understand the full scope of Dexter's psychological damage before committing to protecting him. After reading about his trauma, his brother's survival, and the predictions about their potential for violence, she chose to destroy the evidence. The timing of her confession was also particularly telling. She waited until she was dying to reveal this information, understanding that it was perhaps the most damning evidence of her complicity. She had carried this knowledge for over 30 years, watching Dexter develop into exactly the kind of killer the psychological evaluations had predicted, and never wavered in her protection. Her admission that she knew about Brian proved that she understood Dexter knew there were two damaged children from that massacre, and when one of them became a serial killer targeting Miami, she recognized the family connection immediately. Yet, she never warned anyone or tried to intervene. The file reading also explained why Camilla was so confident in her protection of Dexter throughout the years. She had clinical documentation of his psychological state and professional predictions about his likely development. She made informed decisions about enabling a potential killer based on comprehensive psychological evidence. Most of all, her willingness to destroy evidence after reading it proved that she believed Dexter's mission was more important than preventing the violence the files predicted. She chose to facilitate his development as a killer rather than seek help for a severely damaged child. But her knowledge would soon be put to the ultimate test when she made a request that only made sense if she knew exactly what Dexter was capable of. And I believe that reading that file convinced her that Dexter's path was inevitable, so she decided to help him rather than try to stop him. And that all led to one moment: asking Dexter to kill her. The most definitive proof that Camilla knew exactly what Dexter was came when she made the request that no one would ever make to an innocent man. She asked him to help her die. It was a calculated request made to someone she knew was capable of killing with compassion and precision. By season 3, Camilla was dying of lung cancer, her body ravaged by the disease and her spirit crushed by the inevitable progression towards a painful death. The medical treatments had failed, the prognosis was terminal, and she faced weeks or months of increasing agony before the cancer finally claimed her life. For most people, this would mean accepting hospice care, increasing pain medication, and hoping for a peaceful natural death. But Camilla had a different option available to her, one that required complete trust in someone's ability to kill without malice or cruelty. She had spent decades watching Dexter develop into exactly the kind of person who could provide what she needed: a merciful death delivered by someone who cared about her. When she brought up the subject with Dexter, her approach was careful but direct. She didn't dance around the topic or speak in euphemisms about helping her find peace. She specifically asked him to end her suffering because she knew he had both the capability and the emotional detachment necessary to perform such an act without being destroyed by guilt or remorse. Her comment about him not being Catholic revealed her understanding of his moral framework, or lack thereof. She knew that religious prohibitions against taking life wouldn't constrain him because he operated outside conventional moral boundaries. This was someone asking a killer to add one more death to his count. albeit for compassionate reasons. The request also demonstrated her complete trust in Dexter's precision and care. She wasn't afraid that he would botch the job, cause unnecessary pain, or approach the task with anything other than clinical efficiency. Her confidence in his abilities could only come from knowing exactly what he had done to others and how skillfully he had done it. Most tellingly, she never expressed any fear about making this request to him. There was no hesitation or concern that he might be shocked or horrified by what she was asking. She approached him as naturally as someone might ask a doctor for medication or a lawyer for legal advice. She was consulting a professional about services within his area of expertise. Her willingness to entrust her death to Dexter proved that she viewed his killing not as random violence or uncontrolled rage, but as precise, purposeful action that could be channeled towards compassionate ends when circumstances warranted it. She understood that his ability to take life could be a gift rather than a curse when applied to someone who was suffering unnecessarily. The request also revealed how completely she had accepted his true nature. She saw him as someone with unique capabilities that could serve beneficial purposes. Her moral framework has shifted so completely that she viewed mercy killings as a natural extension of his other activities. Her calm demeanor when making this request proved that she had long ago made peace with what Dexter was and what he did. She had normalized his violence so completely that she could request it for herself without any emotional distress. Now, drop a comment if you think that Camilla's final request was the ultimate proof that she knew everything all along. And when the moment came, she welcomed it with a smile. The most heartbreaking moment in Camilla's story came when she finally received what she called the perfect key lime pie from Dexter, the one laced with sodium pentothal that would end her suffering. Her reaction to eating this final dessert proved beyond any doubt that she knew exactly what was happening and welcomed it with complete peace of mind. Throughout her illness, Dexter had brought Camilla several key lime pies, each one rejected for various reasons. Too sweet, wrong texture, not quite right. She had specific standards that none of the previous offerings had met, but these rejections weren't really about culinary preferences. They were about timing, preparation, and her readiness for what the final pie would represent. When Dexter arrived with the last pie, everything about the interaction was different. The conversation was more intimate, more final, with both of them understanding that this visit marked the end of their decades-long relationship. Camilla's demeanor had shifted from the relentless discomfort of her previous days to something approaching serenity. As she took her first bite of the perfect pie, Camilla's immediate recognition that this one was different wasn't about flavor or preparation. The subtle change in her expression, the way she paused and looked at Dexter with understanding, revealed that she knew the pie contained something the others hadn't. This wasn't surprise or confusion, this was acknowledgement. Her continued eating, despite this recognition, was perhaps the most powerful evidence of her complete trust in Dexter's intentions. She didn't stop, didn't question what she was consuming, didn't express any fear about what would happen next. Instead, she savored each bite while maintaining eye contact with him, communicating her gratitude without words. The way she thanked him wasn't the casual appreciation someone shows for a thoughtful gift. Her tone carried weight, finality, and deep emotional significance that only made sense if she understood what he was giving her. She was thanking him, not just for the pie, but for the merciful death it would provide and the courage to deliver what she had asked for. As the sodium pentothal began taking effect, Camilla's responses became increasingly peaceful. She didn't fight the growing drowsiness or express confusion about what was happening to her. Instead, she seemed to welcome the gradual loss of consciousness as the answer to her prayers for release from unbearable pain. Her final moments of coherence were spent looking at Dexter with something approaching maternal pride. She had watched him grow from a damaged child into a man capable of providing exactly what she needed when she needed it most. Her smile wasn't drugged confusion. It was genuine satisfaction that her faith in him had been justified. The entire scene demonstrated how completely Camilla had accepted not just Dexter's nature, but the positive applications of his deadly skills. She didn't see this as a murder or even suicide. She saw it as a compassionate act performed by someone who understood suffering and knew how to end it efficiently and painlessly. Her peaceful consumption of the lethal pie proved that she had never feared Dexter or viewed him as a threat to innocent people. She understood that his violence was targeted, controlled, and could be channeled towards merciful purposes when circumstances warranted such action. The moment also revealed how their relationship had evolved over the decades from family friendship to something approaching professional collaboration. She had provided him with research and protection throughout his career, and now he was providing her with the specialized service only he could deliver. But it was her final words that left no room for doubt. "You're not like Brian." As the sodium pentothal began taking effect and Camilla drifted towards death, she delivered what might be the most damning evidence of her complete knowledge. She told Dexter that he was nothing like his brother Brian. It was a comparative analysis that could only come from someone who understood exactly what both men had become. Her comment revealed that she had been following Brian's development just as closely as she had monitored Dexter's progress over the years. When Brian Moser emerged as the ice truck killer, terrorizing Miami with his elaborate displays of dismembered bodies, Camilla immediately recognized him as the missing brother from Dexter's adoption file. She had watched his killing spree unfold in the news, while knowing his true identity and connections to Dexter. The fact that she could make such a definitive comparison between the two brothers proved that she understood their different approaches to violence. Brian's kills were theatrical performances designed to shock and terrorize the public, elaborate artistic displays that revealed his need for attention and recognition. His murders were chaotic, public spectacles that brought maximum media coverage and police attention. Dexter's kills, by contrast, were precise, private, and purposeful. His victims disappeared without fanfare, their deaths serving justice rather than ego. Where Brian sought attention and chaos, Dexter maintained secrecy and order. Camilla had observed these fundamental differences and concluded that Dexter's path, while still involving murder, was somehow more moral or justified than his brother's attention-seeking spree. Her reassurance that Dexter wasn't like Brian carried deeper implications about her moral framework. She was expressing approval for Dexter's approach while condemning Brian's. In her mind, there was a meaningful distinction between killing for justice and killing for attention, between targeted elimination of criminals and random displays of violence. The timing of this revelation was particularly significant. As she lay dying from poison that Dexter had given her, Camilla used her final conscious moments to reassure him that his brand of killing was acceptable, even admirable. She wasn't trying to dissuade him from violence, she was encouraging him to continue on his current path, rather than follow his brother's example. Her comment also revealed how long that she had been processing the psychological differences between the two traumatized children from the Shipyard massacre. She had read their file, understood their shared origins, watched them developed into killers through different paths, and concluded that one was acceptable while the other was not. This moral distinction proved that Camilla had developed a sophisticated understanding of Dexter's code and methods. She recognized that his kills served a purpose beyond personal satisfaction, that his victims were chosen based on criteria beyond convenience or opportunity. She had essentially become a philosophical supporter of vigilante justice delivered by someone she considered qualified to make those life and death decisions. Her reassurance about Brian also demonstrated her protective instincts towards Dexter's psychological well-being. She understood that killing his brother had been difficult for him, and that she wanted to ensure that he didn't feel guilty about eliminating someone who had chosen a different, more destructive path. The comment served as both absolution and encouragement. She was forgiving him for Brian's death while simultaneously validating his continued activities. Her message was clear. Brian deserved to die because he was dangerous and chaotic, while Dexter deserved to live because he was controlled and purposeful. But her final words would provide the ultimate proof that she had always known the truth and never wavered in her support. I believe that her comparison of the brothers showed that she viewed Dexter as the good serial killer, someone whose violence served positive purposes rather than destructive ones. For decades, Camilla Fig helped hide the bodies, buried the evidence, and shielded him from discovery. She was in, and her final words weren't just absolution, they were permission. She didn't just know who Dexter was, she helped him stay that way. But she wasn't the only one who knew. Next time, we're breaking down how much Detective Quinn really knew about Dexter, and why he let it all happen anyway.